own sister stole my house, locked me out, but when she took it too far, karma destroyed her life, and my name is Amy, and if you had told me a year ago that I'd be at war with my own sister over the house our parents left behind, I wouldn't have believed you. But here I am, tangled in a mess I never asked for, forced to fight for what's rightfully mine. It all started when my parents passed away suddenly. It was a devastating loss, but there was no time to process my grief. I was too busy handling the funeral arrangements, dealing with their finances, and sorting through years of their lives packed into this house. I had been the one taking care of them in their final years, making sure their medical appointments were kept, ensuring they were comfortable, and handling everything they needed. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Melanie, was living it up in another city. She had always been the golden child, the one our parents doted on, the one who could do no wrong. It had been that way since we were kids. While I was the responsible one, Melanie was the reckless one, but she never had to face consequences. Our parents would brush off her mistakes, laugh at her selfish decisions, and always find a way to justify her behavior. It used to bother me, but I had long since learned to accept it. I played my role, and she played hers. We had never been particularly close. As adults, our lives had taken completely different paths. While I stayed in our hometown, making sure everything ran smoothly and stepping up when our parents needed help, Melanie was off in a big city, working in marketing, partying, and indulging in luxury shopping sprees. We rarely spoke unless she needed something, and honestly, that was fine with me. When the will was read, there were no surprises, at least not for me. The house was left to me, while Melanie received her share in financial assets. Our parents had made their wishes clear for years, and anyone who knew the situation understood why. I had been the one who stayed, the one who took care of them. This house was my home, and now it was my responsibility. For a few months after the inheritance was settled, things were quiet. Then, one evening, my phone rang. It was Melanie. I almost didn't answer. She rarely called unless she needed something, and I wasn't in the mood to deal with whatever crisis she had gotten herself into. But against my better judgment, I picked up. "Amy, hey, it's been so long," she chirped, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I could already tell where this was going. "What do you need, Melanie?" I sighed. She gasped, as if the idea that she was calling for a favor was offensive. "Can't I just call to check on my big sister?" I stayed silent, waiting. There was a dramatic pause. Then she launched into her real reason for calling. "So, listen, I'm in a bit of a rough spot right now. Things have been crazy at work, and I've been hit with some unexpected expenses. Nothing major, just a temporary setback. I was thinking, maybe I could come stay with you for a little while? Just until I get back on my feet." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Melanie was never good with money. She lived beyond her means, always chasing some extravagant lifestyle she couldn't actually afford. But this was a new low, even for her. She had just inherited a significant amount of money a few months ago. How had she already blown through it? I wanted to say no. Every instinct told me to say no. But she was my sister. So I hesitated. And that hesitation was my first mistake. "I don't know, Melanie," I started, but she cut me off before I could even finish my sentence. "Amy, come on. It's just for a little while. I promise I won't be a burden. I'll help out around the house. I'll keep to myself. You won't even know I'm there." I didn't believe that for a second. Still, something in me felt guilty. Maybe it was the old childhood conditioning, the voice in my head that had always told me I had to be the responsible one, the one who kept the family together. Against my better judgment, I sighed. "Fine, but just for a little while. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You won't regret this," she said, her voice bright with excitement. I already regretted it. Melanie arrived 2 days later with 3 oversized suitcases and a shopping bag filled with designer clothes. I should have known right then and there that this wasn't going to be a short-term arrangement. At first, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she really did just need a little time to get back on her feet. But within the first week, I realized I had made a terrible mistake. She didn't just move in, she took over. The first thing she did was update the house. One evening, I came home from work to find the living room completely rearranged. My furniture had been shoved aside, and in its place were brand new throw pillows, a glass coffee table I'd never seen before, and a massive mirror leaning against the wall. "Surprise," she said, beaming. I thought the place could use a little refresh. I stared at her. "Where's my bookshelf?" "Oh, don't worry. I put it in storage." It didn't really fit the aesthetic. The aesthetic? Since when did my home need to fit Melanie's aesthetic? I wanted to argue, but I was too exhausted from work. Maybe if I just let her do her thing, she'd be out sooner. That was my second mistake. Within days, my home no longer felt like my own. She ordered more furniture online without telling me. She changed the curtains, replaced the rugs, and even brought in some ridiculous chandelier that looked completely out of place. She started hosting friends over without warning me, turning my quiet home into a social hub for her equally entitled friends. Some nights, I'd come home expecting to unwind, only to find a full-blown dinner party happening in my dining room. When I confronted her, she just laughed. "Amy, relax. It's just a little fun. You're always so serious." Serious? Serious? This was my home, and she was treating it like her personal playground. Then, one night, she dropped the bomb. "You know," she mused over a glass of wine, "it would only be fair if we shared the house." I blinked. "What?" "Well, we're sisters. We should both have a say in what happens here. I mean, technically, it's our family home, right?" I put down my drink, suddenly realizing where this was heading. This wasn't just about her staying for a little while. She wanted to stay for good, and she had no intention of leaving without a fight. I should have seen it coming. From the moment Melanie stepped into my house, she had no intention of ever leaving. At first, I told myself she just needed time. Maybe she would get bored, realize this wasn't her scene, and move on like she always did. But I underestimated her. She wasn't here to visit. She was here to take over. It started with small things, little invasions of my space that seemed harmless at first. She'd move my stuff around, borrow things without asking, leave her mess everywhere like this was a hotel and I was the maid. Then it escalated. One night, I came home late from work, exhausted and dreaming of nothing but my bed. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The house was filled with people. Strangers lounging on my couch, drinking from my glasses, laughing like they owned the place. The smell of perfume and spilled wine lingered in the air. "What the hell is this?" I snapped, dropping my bag. Melanie appeared, grinning, a glass of champagne in her hand. "Amy, you're home. Come join us." I scanned the room. There were at least 10 people, all dressed like they had just walked out of a fashion magazine, their expensive watches and designer dresses gleaming under my ceiling lights. "I didn't agree to this," I said through clenched teeth. She waved a dismissive hand. "Relax. We were just having a little get-together. No big deal." I turned to the man sitting in my armchair, the chair I had spent years curling up in with a book. "Who even are you?" He smirked. "Lucas." I turned back to Melanie. "Melanie, I want everyone out. Now." Her smile faded, replaced by an exaggerated pout. "Geez, Amy, why are you always such a buzzkill? This is our house. We should enjoy it. Our house." There it was again. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a deep breath, forced a smile, and turned on my heel, heading upstairs. I slammed my door shut, but even through the walls, I could hear them laughing, toasting, as if I were the guest and she was the host. That was the moment I knew. Melanie wasn't just overstaying her welcome. She had decided this house was hers. Over the next few weeks, things spiraled. She started ordering deliveries, boxes piling up in the hallway. New furniture, decorative pieces, ridiculous luxury items she had no way of affording. It was as if she was redesigning the house right in front of me, erasing any trace that it was ever mine. She moved my things into storage without asking. She replaced the dining table, the curtains, even the rugs. One night, I found a delivery truck outside, men carrying in a massive sectional couch that took up half the living room. My living room? What the hell is this? I demanded. Melanie, standing by the door, crossed her arms. I thought the house could use a more modern touch. You mean your touch? She rolled her eyes. Amy, you're so dramatic. I just want us to have a space that feels shared. I stared at her. She was serious. This isn't our space, I said, my voice dangerously low. This is my home. The one Mom and Dad left me. She scoffed. God, do you even hear yourself? You sound so selfish. I mean, we're family. Why should one of us get everything while the other gets nothing? You got your inheritance, I reminded her. She smirked. And it's gone. I felt my stomach drop. I knew Melanie was reckless, but she had burned through all that money already. She must have seen the look on my face because she immediately went on the defensive. Don't look at me like that. It wasn't my fault. Life is expensive, okay? And some bad investments, well, things didn't go as planned. But that's why we have each other, right? To support one another? I knew what she was really saying. She wanted a free ride. She wasn't staying temporarily. She wasn't planning on leaving at all. The final straw came when I arrived home one night and my key didn't work. I jiggled it, thinking I had grabbed the wrong one. No luck. I tried again, twisting the handle. Locked. Panic set in as I rang the doorbell, knocking hard. A few minutes later, Melanie opened the door, looking utterly unbothered. Oh, hey. I stared at her. The locks don't work. She yawned. Yeah, I changed them. For a long moment, I couldn't process what she had just said. You changed the locks? My voice was eerily calm. She smirked. Yeah, I figured since I'm home more than you, it made sense for me to have control over who comes and goes. I clenched my fists so tightly my nails dug into my palms. Let me get this straight, I said, voice shaking. You moved into my house, you took over my space, and now you've locked me out? Oh, don't be so dramatic, she scoffed. I'll get you a spare key. Eventually, something inside me snapped. This wasn't just some misunderstanding. This wasn't just Melanie being difficult. She was trying to take my home from me. I had tried to be patient. I had tried to be reasonable. No more. The next morning, I was sitting in my lawyer's office. She's refusing to leave? He asked, eyebrows raised. I nodded. Not only that, she changed the locks on me. He leaned back in his chair, letting out a low whistle. She's bold. I'll give her that. What are my options? I asked. He folded his hands. Legally, she has no claim to the house. Your parents left it to you. The will is ironclad. But since she's been living there for over a month, she could try to claim tenant rights, which might make eviction tricky. She's not a tenant, I snapped. She's a squatter. He gave me a knowing look. Which is why we need to start eviction proceedings as soon as possible. If she refuses to leave, we can take legal action. I exhaled sharply. I had never wanted it to come to this. She was my sister, but she had pushed me to this point. Start the process, I said. This was war now, and I wasn't about to lose. I always thought family fights were just loud arguments, passive-aggressive texts, and cold shoulders at holiday dinners. But this wasn't just a fight. It was an all-out war. And my sister, Melanie, was playing dirty. After she changed the locks on my house, I knew I couldn't just let this slide. My lawyer reassured me that I had the legal upper hand, but that didn't make the situation any less infuriating. While I was working and handling my responsibilities, Melanie had transformed my home into her personal playground. She was living rent-free, throwing parties, redecorating like she owned the place, and now she was treating me like the unwelcome guest. I refused to be shut out of my own home. So, I did what I had to do. I called a locksmith and had the locks changed again. The moment Melanie came back from wherever she had been wasting money, she found herself locked out for the first time. The tables had turned. I was in the kitchen, sipping coffee, when I heard the pounding on the door. Amy, open the damn door. I took my time. When I finally opened it, Melanie stood there, eyes blazing, phone in hand like she was ready to call the cops. What's wrong? I asked innocently. You know exactly what's wrong, she shrieked. You changed the locks on me. Oh, you mean like you did to me? I folded my arms. She scoffed. That was different. How? She opened her mouth, closed it, then huffed. It just was, okay? I leaned against the doorframe. Look, Melanie, if you want to live here, you need to contribute. Rent, bills, groceries, something. Otherwise, you need to find somewhere else to go. Her face twisted into a smirk. You're so heartless. I'm your sister. Family should help each other. Family doesn't mooch off each other. She tossed her hair over her shoulder. Fine. If that's how you want to play it, I'll handle this my way. I had no idea what that meant at the time, but I would soon find out. The next day, my phone started blowing up. Aunt Lillian, my cousin Jasmine, even old family friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Every single message was the same. Amy, how could you kick Melanie out? She's struggling. She's your sister. How can you be so cruel? I can't believe you do this to your own blood. It didn't take me long to figure out what was happening. Melanie had gone public. She had spun a whole new story, making herself the tragic victim and me the cold, heartless villain. In her version of events, she wasn't a freeloading manipulator who had taken over my house. No, she was a helpless woman down on her luck, abandoned by her selfish sister. I scrolled through social media and saw the post she had made. A blurry selfie with tear-streaked makeup. A long paragraph about how she had lost everything and was now being forced out into the streets. Hashtags like hashtag family betrayal and hashtag heartless sister attached. The comment sections were flooded with sympathy. OMG, I'm so sorry. If you need a place to stay, I got you. What kind of person does this to their own sister? She's evil. I hope karma gets her. I felt my blood boil. She had spent months trashing my home, running up my bills, ignoring every boundary I set. And now she was playing the victim? I knew that getting into a public fight online would only make things worse, so I didn't respond. I refused to stoop to her level. Instead, I focused on what actually mattered, getting her out of my house. Legal action begins. The day after her smear campaign began, I sat in my lawyer's office. This is getting worse, I told him. She's making it seem like I'm the bad guy. He skimmed through the legal documents we had prepared. Ignore the noise. The court will only care about facts. So, what's next? He tapped his pen on the desk. We file for eviction. She's not a tenant. She's an unauthorized occupant. But be prepared. It could take a little time. I exhaled sharply. How long? A few weeks, maybe more. Weeks. That meant weeks of Melanie scheming, throwing parties, and making my life a living hell. I didn't have a choice. File it. If I thought Melanie would back down quietly, I was dead wrong. When she realized her social media stunt wasn't working, she switched tactics. She started blasting loud music at all hours of the night. She left dirty dishes and garbage all over the house, letting the place descend into chaos. She invited more and more strangers over. People I had never seen before, treating my home like a nightclub. One night, I came home and found two random guys passed out on my couch. I was done. I started documenting everything. Photos, videos, time-stamped records of every mess, every party, every moment of pure disrespect. If this went to court, I wanted proof. Then, out of nowhere, Melanie made an offer. If you give me $20,000, I'll leave. I almost laughed in her face. You expect me to pay you to leave my own house? She gave a lazy shrug. I think it's fair. I stared at her, trying to understand the level of delusion. No. Fine, she said, eyes flashing with something unreadable. You'll regret this. I had no idea what she meant, but I was about to find out. A few nights later, I was cleaning up the disaster she had left in the kitchen when I noticed something strange in the corner of the living room. A small, barely noticeable black device tucked between the bookshelves. I frowned, stepping closer. It was a hidden camera. My stomach dropped. Melanie had been recording me. She had set up a camera in the living room, likely hoping to catch me saying or doing something she could twist against me. I ripped it out of the wall, heart pounding. That was it. This wasn't just a sibling dispute anymore. This was calculated. This was war. And I wasn't about to lose. Melanie had crossed the line so many times. I had lost count. But the hidden camera? That was a whole new level of insanity. I held the small black device in my hands, my heart pounding. She had planted it in my own living room, spying on me, trying to catch something, anything, to use against me. What did she think she would find? Me saying something in anger? A moment of frustration she could twist into some fabricated abuse claim? She wanted leverage. She wanted to trap me. and I wasn't going to let her win. I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and started taking pictures of the camera, its position, the timestamp of when I found it. Then, I did the only thing I could do. I called my lawyer. She did what? He asked, stunned. She hid a camera in the house. I found it tucked behind the bookshelf. There was a pause on the other end. Amy, this is actually good news. I almost laughed. How is this good news? Because it strengthens your case. It shows intent. She's not just a freeloader. She's actively trying to manipulate and control the situation. This will help in court. He was right. If she was willing to go this far, what else was she capable of? I felt something shift inside me. Up until this point, I had still been holding on to the idea that Melanie was my sister. That, despite everything, she wasn't evil. Just selfish, reckless, lost. But no, this wasn't just about her being irresponsible. This was about power. And I wasn't going to let her take mine away. The next morning, I woke up to another nightmare. Melanie had doubled down on her smear campaign. She wasn't just making vague social media posts about being kicked out anymore. No, she was going full soap opera. She had uploaded a video, dramatically wiping away fake tears, telling her thousands of followers that her own sister was throwing her out onto the streets. I never thought Amy would do this to me, she sniffled on camera. I've lost everything, and now, my own family has turned their back on me. The comments were exactly what you'd expect. OMG, you deserve so much better. Your sister sounds evil. I can't believe she'd do this to you. Stay strong, Queen. My phone buzzed with texts from family members, most of them furious. Aunt Lillian, how could you do this to your own sister? She's struggling. Cousin Jasmine, I always knew you were cold, but this? Wow. I clenched my jaw, resisting the urge to throw my phone across the room. I wasn't going to argue with people who had already made up their minds. I wasn't going to play her game. Instead, I was going to end this once and for all. The eviction hearing was scheduled for the following week. I walked into that courtroom with my head held high, armed with everything: the proof of ownership, my financial records, the photos of the destruction she had caused, and now, evidence of her hidden camera stunt. Melanie, on the other hand, walked in like she was starring in her own tragic movie. She wore a simple beige dress, something deliberately humble, like she wanted the judge to see her as a poor, struggling victim. Her lawyer stood up first. Your Honor, my client has been living in the property under the assumption that it was a shared family home. She was unfairly misled into believing she had a right to stay. I could barely contain my rage. Misled? She knew exactly what she was doing. My lawyer stood up next. Your Honor, my client is the sole legal owner of the property. The will explicitly states that the house belongs to her. Furthermore, the defendant has contributed nothing to household expenses, has changed the locks without permission, and has been caught attempting to surveil my client inside her own home. That last part made the judge's eyebrows rise. Melanie's lawyer fumbled for words. That's a baseless accusation. I didn't even have to say anything. My lawyer pulled out the photos of the hidden camera, the timestamps, the proof. Melanie's face turned pale. The judge went through the evidence carefully. The ruling didn't take long. The defendant has 30 days to vacate the premises. Failure to do so will result in legal action. I won. Melanie lost. But as we left the courtroom, I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't going to accept defeat quietly. Melanie's final act of destruction. For the next few days, Melanie stayed eerily quiet. No more tantrums. No more public breakdowns. She even stopped posting on social media. It made me nervous. Then, the night before she was due to leave, I came home and found the house trashed. Furniture overturned. Walls spray-painted with insults. Broken dishes littering the floor. But the worst part? The family photos. She had ripped up every single picture of our parents, torn them to shreds, and left the pieces scattered like confetti. I stood in the wreckage, feeling something between fury and heartbreak. Melanie had spent months trying to take my home from me, and when she couldn't win, she tried to destroy it instead. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and started documenting everything. I wasn't even surprised anymore. This was who she was. The next morning, She left without saying a word. I watched from the window as she dragged her overstuffed suitcases down the driveway. There was no dramatic farewell, no last-minute apology. She just left. And just like that, the house was mine again. But it didn't feel like mine. Not yet. It felt like a battlefield. I knew it would take time. Time to repaint the walls, to replace the furniture, to get rid of the stench of chaos she had left behind. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. And I promised myself this. I would never let her, or anyone, steal my peace again. Melanie was gone. I stood in the empty, wrecked living room, staring at the remnants of what used to be my home. The walls were vandalized, my furniture was ruined, and the final insult. Every single picture of our parents had been shredded. It should have hurt more. But all I felt was exhaustion. This house, the place where I had cared for Mom and Dad in their final years, had become a battleground. Every corner of it held memories, some good, some painful, and now, some filled with rage and destruction. Melanie had tried to take it from me. When she couldn't, she did the next best thing. She tried to make it unlivable. But she was gone now, and I had one. For the next few days, I barely stopped moving. I repainted the walls, scrubbing away the hateful words she had spray-painted. I replaced the broken furniture, threw away the ruined rugs, and deep-cleaned every inch of the house. Each stroke of paint, each bag of trash I hauled out, it felt like erasing her. But no matter how much I cleaned, I couldn't shake the feeling that this place would never truly be mine again. The memories of her entitled smirk, her fake tears, her laughter as she threw parties in my home, they were embedded in the walls. I wasn't sure I could ever see this house as a safe place again. And then, just as I was starting to find some peace, a letter arrived in the mail. From Melanie. I held the envelope in my hands, debating whether I should even open it. A big part of me wanted to rip it up, toss it in the garbage with the rest of the things she had left behind. But curiosity got the better of me. I unfolded the letter and read, "Amy, I know you probably hate me right now, and maybe I deserve that. But I've had some time to think, and I just want to say, I'm sorry. I let things get out of hand. I was stressed, and I wasn't thinking straight. I never meant for things to go this far. I hope one day you can forgive me. Maybe we can talk? Start fresh? We're sisters, after all. That has to count for something, right? Melanie." I stared at the words, waiting for some kind of emotional reaction. Anger, sadness, anything. But I felt nothing. I knew exactly what this was. Melanie didn't regret what she did. She regretted losing. She wasn't sorry that she had tried to steal my home. She wasn't sorry for manipulating our family, for lying about me online, for spying on me with hidden cameras. She was sorry that none of it had worked. This wasn't an apology. This was an attempt to keep a door open, to keep me within reach. I wasn't stupid enough to fall for it. I folded the letter neatly, walked outside, and set it on fire. Melanie was my sister, but that didn't mean I had to keep her in my life. In the weeks that followed, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I was going to sell the house. At first, the idea felt impossible. This was the home I had grown up in, the home my parents had left me. But after everything that had happened, I realized something. This wasn't my home anymore. It was a battlefield, haunted by memories of screaming matches, betrayal, and destruction. It was time to let it go. When I told my boyfriend, Luke, he didn't hesitate. "I think that's a great idea," he said. "You deserve a fresh start." And for the first time in months, I felt like I was making a decision for myself. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt. For me. Just as I was preparing to list the house, I got one last nasty surprise. Another letter. Not from Melanie, this time, from a debt collector. Apparently, Melanie had taken out a massive personal loan years ago, and somehow, she had listed me as a co-signer. I saw red. I had never co-signed anything for her. Ever. I immediately called my lawyer, who handled it swiftly. Within a few days, we had proven that my signature had been forged. The debt was not mine. It was just another one of Melanie's last-ditch efforts to drag me down with her. It didn't work. And this time, I didn't even feel surprised. I had expected it. As I packed up my things and prepared to leave the house behind, I started hearing whispers about Melanie's new life. Her social circle had completely crumbled. People who had once blindly supported her were starting to see the truth. Her lies, her manipulations, it had all caught up to her. She had lost her job after missing too many deadlines. Her credit was completely destroyed. She was bouncing from couch to couch, trying to find someone new to mooch off. And the best part? No one wanted to help her anymore. She had burned too many bridges. For so long, Melanie had lived like nothing could touch her, like she could manipulate her way through life forever. But karma had finally come knocking. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry at her. I just felt nothing. She wasn't my problem anymore. The day I officially handed over the keys to the house, I didn't cry. I thought I might. After all, this was the house I had fought so hard to protect. The house where I had grown up. The house where my parents had spent their last years. But I felt nothing but relief. As I drove away, Luke reached over and squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. "Yeah, I really am." I wasn't just leaving the house behind. I was leaving her behind. Melanie had spent her entire life trying to drag me down with her. But I was free now. And for the first time in my life, I was truly moving forward. No more fights. No more manipulation. No more Melanie. Just me and my brand new life.